without further ado, let me go ahead and dive in and introduce you to our session speaker today. Ms. Robin Taylor is a lifetime resident of Omaha, Nebraska. She graduated from the University of Nebraska, Omaha with a degree in English and journalism. Ms. Robin has worked at the University of Nebraska Medical Center for close to 30 years with 25 years of grant and manuscript experience. Ms. Robin has also started her career at UNMC in the volunteer department, which is a paid position. I know usually you hear volunteer and you think unpaid, but it was a paid position for 4 years. And then she spent 24 years in the Department of Pharmacology and Experimental Neuroscience, which was a basic science research lab. Her role was editing and being a project specialist. She transitioned to the Department of Neurological Sciences, which is a basic science and clinical department here. And in 2020, she continues to use her skill set in editing and compliance of manuscripts and grants. Ms. Robin was the managing editor, for the Journal of Neuroimmune Pharmacology for 15 years. So please join me in welcoming Ms. Robin this afternoon, where she is going to talk to us about crafting biosketches, which is really important, especially I know our academic partners are all well versed in that, but I think it's really important to understand for academic partners and our community partners that are joining us today, how to craft a biosketch for our community partners, which looks quite different sometimes from the academic biosketches. So Ms. Robin is coming with a wealth of knowledge. She's getting ready to drop some gems on us this afternoon. So I will turn it over to you, Ms. Robin. Oh, you're on mute, Ms. Robin.
There we go. How's that? Thanks so much for inviting me to present today and for the introduction. And I also want to thank Dr. Rizzo and Dr. King for inviting me to present. This is in my wheelhouse. I really appreciate being part of the Great Plains Community Engaged Research Institute. As mentioned, I've been on the basic science research side, so it's really fun to be able to see this transition and how we're going to move the field forward. Before we get started, I just want to give a big shout out to Emily Frankel. She has worked so hard behind the scenes to keep all of us on track, whether we're presenting or the community partners. And thank you, Emily. Huge shout out to you.
Thank you, Robin.
And I think what I want to start with is how important I feel it is that that clinicians and researchers understand the community. There's a paper out in the Progress in Community Health Partnership, and it was written by, Vanessa Hirazuka. I think I pronounced her name correct. And I love the title of this. The title is, "You Actually View Us as Experts in Our Own Systems." So as community, as we reach out to you, you guys are the experts and you're going to help us move the needle forward on different research. So thanks for being part of this journey with us. And I hope that today's presentation meets your needs and reach out. I tend to talk really fast, so if I'm talking too fast, please tell me to slow down. Okay, so today's, as mentioned, is going to be how to craft a National Institutes of Health biosketch. And there's going to be 3 goals of the session. Is to understand what a biosketch is. And we're going to understand the components of a biosketch and hopefully have a few minutes for you guys to kind of start your biosketch. So really, what is a biosketch? We've written resumes. Our researchers, our academic people, they have their curriculum vitae, their CVs. It tells your story. It tells the reviewer, why are you qualified to be part of this grant? You being on the grant, how's it going to be successful? So a biosketch does that. And it's also brief. I know some of my researchers I've worked with, their CVs are hundreds of pages long. Well, the NIH doesn't want to read 100 pages. They limit it to 5 pages. So that's another thing that we want to consider when we're doing it, is keep it brief and follow the instructions that NIH has. So what are the components of a biosketch? Well, there's 4 components. There's personal information, there's a personal statement, there's positions, scientific appointments and honors, and contributions to science. One of the things I always want to remind everyone, whether you are on the research side or you're on the community side, is when you're completing this biosketch, make sure you're using the right form, because the NIH will make changes to the form occasionally, and we want to make sure that we are using the right form. And on my handout, and then also today, I'll show you where you can find how to make sure that you have the right form, because there's always a date on it. So let's start with that personal information. And I think I mentioned that this presentation, or Dr. King did, that it's going to be a lot shorter. And my slides are brief, so you'll have some time to work on your own. But the personal information, what your name, ERA Commons. The ERA Commons is the online interface between the Institute and the federal staff. Now, the researchers, the academic side and researchers, we have a sponsored program administrative office that will apply for that ERA Commons. And I have found out that they will also help the community partners. If you're working with an UNMC researcher, our sponsored programs department should be able to help you obtain that ERA Commons name. So the next part on the personal information is position, title, education and training. It's information that you guys can all probably pop right off the top of your head when you're filling out the form. So what about the personal statement? The information you see here, and I think you have a PDF file of the slides. This is taken directly from the NIH Biosketch webpage. So you can go ahead and look at that. It's the aspects of your training, your previous experimental work, technical expertise, your collaborators who you've worked with in the past, your past performance, and this is considered called ongoing or completed research. If you want to mention different grants that you've had, this is where you would put that. And citations, if you want to list different citations to support your work. In this personal statement area, and these are some guidelines I like to give to the writers, is here's your opportunity to talk about you. I know a lot of times we don't want to toot our own horn, but here's an opportunity for you to share you. You want to let the reviewer know that you're qualified. And I would suggest that people write in the active voice and they use I statements. Carl Jackson presented a few weeks ago, and if he was writing, I'm going to use him as an example, he could write something like, as a certified life skills coach and certified facilitator, I was instrumental in implementing the Omaha Bridge Out of Poverty program. It's right there. It's that this is what he is. And it tells the researcher, yes, he has the skills needed to help make this grant a success. Another piece I'd like to include in a personal statement is to put the title of the grant in the personal statement. And the reason why I say this is I've had researchers send me their biosketch, and they're writing about, they do this, they write a lot of grants. So they send me an old biosketch, and I've had that where they're submitting a HIV grant and they talk about their Parkinson's work. So, you know, you just kind of like, oh, okay, if I put the title of the grant in there, that usually keys them into, oh, yes, I need to maybe tweak this a little bit to focus on that particular grant. Okay. So the next section is, section B is positions, scientific appointments, and honors. NIH changed this recently, and when I say recent, probably in the last 18 months, that we start in reverse chronological order, current to oldest. So here's an example. You know, you can see this 2000 down to the 1984. So it's reverse chronological order. And finally, the contributions to science. This is where you can write up to the 5 most significant contributions. Now, when you're thinking of it as from a community person, you might go, well, what did I contribute to science? You didn't write a lot of manuscripts, you didn't do a lot of lab work that shows your contribution, but you've done so many other things in the community that is considered science, that you've moved the field forward. And I was talking to Emily before we started, and I told her my biosketch wouldn't be very long, but then I realized I organized a number of fundraisers for a couple of different communities. And I thought that's important. I was able to show that I could manage something and that I could present with other workers what I've done. And so this is your time to go ahead and look back on what you've done and write about it. So let's see. So you can include 5 of your most significant contributions, and you want to make sure that your Biosketch is only 5 pages. So this is kind of a short section, especially for our academic researchers, because they have a lot going on. And so anyway, you cannot have figures and tables or graphics in your Biosketch. And if you have publications, you can list up to 4 publications under each contribution. So before we get started on doing our, actually working on our Biosketch, I've given you some references here. If you want to read the You Actually View Us as Experts in Our Own System paper, I've given you a link to how to get to it. There's a link to the NIH Biosketch instructions, ERA Commons, and the North Carolina Community Partner. They have a great guide out there too. So now I'd like to go ahead.
I have a question, Ms. Robin, from your previous slide. So you talked about having the contributions to science and kind of describing some of those significant things that maybe a community partner has done. Is this supposed to be in a paragraph format? And then kind of what's your recommendations in terms of how long each of these contributions should be? Because you could write, you know, like I know it's only supposed to be 5 pages, but if you only have 1 pages for sections A and B, and then you have 4 pages, like maybe, you know, I just don't want partners to think that they got to fill those 4 pages. So just
absolutely not. You do not have to fill the 4 pages. I've seen, especially with early career investigators, that they only have a 3-page Biosketch, and the first page is the personal statement, and then their section B, their positions, and then their contributions to science. They may not have 5, they may only have 2 or 3. And sometimes maybe only 1 because they're so new to the field. So it only has to, you don't have to stretch it out to make 5 pages. If you only have 3 pages, that's fine. And the contributions to science, that it is a paragraph form on the historical aspect of that or the scientific problem, and then how you helped resolve it and what your role was in correcting that scientific problem. Does that make sense? That answer your question, Dr. King?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
It does. And I think there's another question in the chat for you. If you are, I'll read it for you, Ms.
Okay.
Robin, if you'd like. If you are new to creating a Biosketch and cannot reach the 5-page limit, what is the most important piece to showcase? And that's from Ms. Dana.
Hey, Ms. Dana, great question. I believe that there's 2 important pieces, and one is your personal statement. Write about you and what your contribution will be to the grant. And then then the contribution to science. Have something in there that shows that you have contributed. And even there might be, like for me, it would be my volunteer work. And that's important. I mean, it shows that I'm able to recognize something and be able to help solve a problem. Does that help? Does that answer your question, Dana? Okay. Well, I can't hear. No open questions. Okay. Great. So let's go ahead and get started. I believe that you were sent a blank Biosketch, and you were asked to also bring your resume, your CV along, so we can go ahead and let me see, start that. And let me see. Okay, before we get started, I have pulled up a blank Biosketch, and you'll see a few things. I made the comment about the approval date, and this is now, it was reviewed last year, and it's now been approved through September 30th of 2024. So we will be able to use this particular form for a while. And I know that our sponsor, yeah.
We still see your PowerPoint slide. I don't know if you're sharing the Biosketch page, but we still see your PowerPoint.
Oh, thank you. Let me go back.
Yes, and then while you're pulling that up, Ms. Robin, just for those that might not have found it, the blank Biosketch is attached to the calendar invite. It was sent from Emily.
Okay, let's try this. Oh, there we go. Blank, share. Okay, is that, now you can see it? Okay.
Yep, we
So-
can see it.
Yeah, there you go. So there you go. You can see right up here at the very top in the header, there is the review date from NIH when they last looked at it and they approved it, and it's through September 30th of 2024. Our sponsored programs is very good at watching for that approval date, making sure everyone is following it and you have the right form. So if you actually have one, I'd like to go ahead and give you a few minutes to complete yours, start working on it. Does that work for you, Dr. King? If they want to work on it and maybe if they have some questions?
Yeah, sure, that works for me.
Or if you want to go ahead and start working on it. Otherwise, I know it's kind of hard to write a personal statement if you don't have a grant that you were working on. So you don't know how your skill set's going to work on that particular grant. So
I would recommend Ms. Robin for the personal statement. I would just more or less kind of focus on kind of what's your training and background in terms of your expertise. So let's say if you are an executive director for a nonprofit agency that focuses on serving a specific population, like kind of talk about your skill sets that are related to that to get you started for your personal statement, because then you can kind of craft those things into something more palatable for a grant.
thanks. That's a great recommendation. Thanks, Dr. King.
Sure.
So we'll give everybody a few minutes to start that. And
then for the institution and location, you start with your most current degree?
No, you go from your undergrad through your final degree.
Thank you.
And if you have specific questions for Robin, if you raise your hand, I can unmute you and then you can ask your question.
And for everyone out there, in the handouts that I sent you, there are some good, there's some personal statements that I thought were really good examples. One of them is from a Ralph Johnson, and he's a pastor. So he's on the community side. So that might give you some ideas on how to write from the community perspective.
Oh, we have a question in the chat. You see the question?
Yes,
Okay.
I think am I on mute?
Nope, you're not.
Nope. Okay. We do have a question, and it says, can we mention about current or past funding in new Biosketch? Yes, you can. Great question. It used to be in section D, and now they've moved that. So you put that current and past funding under your personal statement at the end of the personal statement. And the past funding is the past 3 years. So yes, go ahead and put that there.
All right, are there any other questions or anything burning that someone or anyone would like to ask Ms. Robin while we have her here with us?
Okay, well, I want to before I leave, I want to again thank Dr. King and Dr. Rizzo and Emily for giving me this opportunity. Hopefully over the next few days, or when you're getting ready to submit a grant, that you get your Biosketch completed. I am very open to answering any of your questions. If you have questions, you're more than welcome to contact me. My email is on the slides, and I'd be happy to answer any of your questions. Another thing I want to maybe throw out there is, as you're doing this, you might want to have either maybe if you have a mentor or someone you work closely with, that who knows you, kind of to have them look at your bio sketch, and they might say, hey, you forgot to put this. This would be good to add. So that's a little suggestion there. Again, thank you for giving me this opportunity, and good luck with the Institute and all your grant writing.